Hello and welcome to part 3 of our ongoing study of the Bhagavad Gita, India's most beloved spiritual wisdom text. Here in the Eknath Easwaran translation from Nilgiri Press, second edition, 2007. I'm just mentioning that because I know you're going to run out and want to buy this, not because I'm telling you to, but because this is an important book in any home library of any person like yourself. If you're watching this video, you're interested in these wisdom traditions, and this is an important find. So what I'm doing in this video series is just helping people move through the text and spotlighting a few things, making some comments and reading some key passages. And here in video 3 of this series, we're up to chapter 5. So chapter 5 in the English translation is called Renounce and Rejoice. Or as Gandhi often said, renounce and enjoy. You know, he was asked by a reporter once, what's your philosophy of life, Gandhi? And he paused in 3 words, and he paused and he said, renounce and enjoy, which is basically what this chapter is called too. It's kind of a reworking of the Isha Upanishad, which essentially says that let go of the illusion that you're in control and enjoy your life. You know, this is beautiful, and even though it hurts. So Krishna is teaching Arjuna as we're going through this Gita. Krishna is dropping some major wisdom on Arjuna. And as we said in video 1, each of us is the Arjuna of our own lives. Arjuna is the paradigmatic spiritual seeker here, but he's not a yogi and meditating in the forest. He's not a rishi or a scholar. He's not a renunciant. He's a working man. You know, he's like many of us. Mortgage, kids, bills, life, career, marriage, you know, a lot of things to navigate, taxes, and having to get stuff done here in the messy world of the marketplace, put food on the table and all of that householder stuff. So that's what makes the Gita so, I think, relatable, more so than any of the other Indian wisdom texts. So in chapter 5, Krishna continues to expand on that idea of what it means to work without attachment, or what renunciation means. That's how we say it in English, letting go in plain English. Krishna says both renunciation of action and the selfless performance of action lead to the supreme goal. So there's 2 options there. You can withdraw, you know, go meditate in the forest, that's to renounce action, or the selfless performance of action, as we've been discussing, he wants Arjuna to do. He knows who Arjuna is. He knows Arjuna is a man of action. He's a working man. He's a general of an army. He's got things to do. And so he's sort of directing his student Arjuna toward that path of action, as long as one continues to be selfless about attachment to the results. Don't attach to the results. But then Krishna puts a finer point on it. He says, you know, there's renunciation of action and the selfless performance of action. They both lead to the supreme goal, Krishna says, but the path of action is better than renunciation. There you go. So there's a lot of mixed messages in the Bhagavad Gita. Some chapters seem to be directed toward meditation. We'll get there in the next chapter. Some seem to be about devotion, you know, bhakti yoga. And this one seems to be about karma yoga still. It's about, you know, action really is the best path. Certainly for Arjuna, and maybe for many of us too. So that's the basic pitch of chapter 5. He says in verse 7, those who follow the path of service, he's calling it service now, who have completely purified themselves and conquered their senses and self-will, see the self, the Atman, in all creatures and are untouched by any action they perform. Again, when you let go, then in a sense, your actions are karma-free, because you are not doing the actions. You are just a servant or an instrument of the Lord who's doing those actions. Remember that line from, was it chapter 3, that all selfless action is Brahman doing the action. When you perform your dharma, your duty, that is Brahman working through you. That's not you doing the work. So that really is essentially it. Let me grab one last piece from chapter 5, and I'm up to verse 18. Those who possess this wisdom, Krishna says, have equal regard for all. Well, here's an interesting point I want to expand a little bit. Those who possess this wisdom have equal regard for all. They see the same self, Atman, in a spiritual aspirant and an outcast, in an elephant, a cow, and a dog. Such people have mastered life. With even mind, they rest in Brahman, who is perfect and is everywhere the same. They are not elated by good fortune or depressed by bad. With mind established in Brahman, they are free from delusion, not dependent on any external support. They realize the joy of spiritual awareness. With consciousness unified through meditation, they live in abiding joy. I'm struck by that. Think of, many of us in the West, when you first come to study Hinduism or Indian history, you're struck immediately by the caste system. And then, of course, you remember that here in the United States, we have every bit as much of a class system, usually based on wealth and access to education and family and all of that. We're very class conscious here, even though we want to be egalitarian. It doesn't really work out that way. But in India, of course, in the ancient texts, you have these formal castes, and there's a lot to discuss there. But I'm struck by how Krishna just pulls a pin and throws a hand grenade in and blows all of that up. Already 2,000 years ago, he's like, the people who possess this wisdom, they see right through that. That the castes make sense on the surface, that there are sociological categories of people, but they aren't real in this sense, that they see the same Atman in a spiritual aspirant as an outcast, and an outcast, an elephant and a cow and a dog. So there's an egalitarian equality doctrine from the great teacher Krishna. And by the way, Buddha did the same thing also in roughly the same time, a little before this maybe, 500 BC, preaching against the caste system. If everyone is Brahman Atman, then why are some people better than others? So you get a diversity of voices out of the Indian system. There's not just one position here, but it's intriguing to see Krishna tear down all hierarchies and point to, again, the presence of the sacred within all things. Let's go to chapter 6. And here the practice shifts to meditation. It's called the practice of meditation. When you have freed yourself from attachment to the results of work, Krishna says, and from desires for the enjoyment of sense objects, you will ascend to the unitive state. Reshape yourself through the power of your will. Never let yourself be degraded by self-will. Let me pause. So he's talking about choosing, right? The will. Choose this instead of that. Discipline yourself instead of just let your appetites and your ego run wild. So that, practice choices carefully. And don't let yourself be degraded by self-will, not capital S self, the little will, egoic cravings. Don't let that mess up your life, your appetites. And then I think there's a really important passage here in verse 6, but it's a little confusing. Out of verse 5, he says, the will is the only friend of the self, the Atman. In that sense that we were just discussing, that making good choices makes your life more amenable to living as a divine vessel. So in that sense, the will is the only friend of the self, and the will is the only enemy of the self. Because, making bad choices, living a depraved life of chasing every destructive craving and so on, that doesn't make your much room in your life for Atman, for the realization of what your essential nature really is. But Krishna really puts a finer point on it. in verse 6. I've often pondered this phrase. It's a paradox. Here's what he says. To those who have conquered themselves, the will is a friend. But it is the enemy of those who have not found the Atman, the self, within them. And I think about struggles like alcohol, say, alcoholism or drug addiction. Let's just use that as an example. If you choose to stay stoned and drunk all the time and throw away your ambition and your opportunities and your connection to other people and your money and your pride, and you just find yourself in this gutter of debauchery, your choice to do that, and we could have a rich debate here about how much volition or free will does the addict have over their using. Clearly not a hell of a lot. So there's a much subtler discussion to have here, but in very crude terms, if you have conquered your will, then if you have conquered your appetites, then the will works for you. It helps you not pick up a drink. But if you haven't conquered yourself, then the will is your enemy, because it says, hey, I'm okay. It's okay to drink. Everybody drinks, whatever. So it's a fascinating bit of psychology. It reminds me of what I often think about Hinduism, that this is really, among many other things, an ancient form of psychology, a study of consciousness and the way that our appetites and our cravings and our concepts and our hungers and our satiation and all those different, conflicting energies in our brain or in our whole body, how they pull us. There's like a tug of war in every direction. And whereas in the West, psychology is really only about 100 years old, Freud and James and all those guys. It's about 1900 when psychology broke away from medicine. Hey, let's study behavior and the mind and consciousness. But you look back at these books, at these traditions, these guys have been doing psychology for 3,000 years. So if by psychology you mean studying consciousness, motivation, will, memory, cognition, and the intersections of all those things. So this is Krishna coaching Arjuna to take up meditation. That's essentially what chapter 6 is about. And in the still mind, in the depths of meditation, the self reveals itself, Krishna says. See, the self, let me say it this way. We are self-illuminating consciousness. You don't have to know what wisdom is. You don't have to hunt it down, track it, find it, bag it, and drag it home and own it. You are that, Tatvamasi. All you have to do in this chapter, Krishna says, is sit down, shut up, clear your head, and let it well up. In the still mind, in the depths of meditation, the self, the Atman, reveals itself. Beholding the Atman by means of the Atman, an aspirant knows the joy and peace of complete fulfillment. Let me use the God word here. Our longing, our spiritual longing to know God, is God longing to be reunited with itself. What we seek is God, and the hunger to seek God is also God. Or, in the language of the Gita, the self, the Atman. We are self-illuminating consciousness. That's why meditation is one of the techniques par excellence. Because it sort of breaks you of the habit of thinking, I'm over here miserable and ignorant. I need to go over there so I can get wise and enlightened. And it's like, maybe you don't need to go anywhere. Maybe you don't need to read any more books or watch any more YouTube videos. Maybe you are that right now, sitting wherever you're sitting. You are already fully, 100% illumined consciousness, only you don't know it. Clouded over by self-will and ego and delusion, Maya. Little by little, Krishna says, through patience and repeated effort, the mind will become stilled in the self, in the Atman. Wherever the mind wanders, restless and diffuse in its search for satisfaction without, lead it within. The infinite joy of touching Brahman is easily attained by those who are free from the burden of evil and established within themselves. They see the self in every creature and all creation in the self. With consciousness unified through meditation, they see everywhere with an equal eye. And here Krishna does a little first person talking here. He says to Arjuna, he says, I am ever present to those who have realized me in every creature, seeing all life as my manifestation. They are never separated from me. They worship me in the hearts of all, and all their actions proceed from me. Wherever they may live, they abide in me. Doesn't that sound, for the Christians watching this, doesn't that sound the way Christ talks about himself? That I am in the Father, and the Father is in me, and I am in you, and you are in me. All of that talk about abiding, having your being there in the Brahmanatman, in the Holy Spirit. And Krishna says, when a person responds to the joys and sorrows of others as if they were his own, he has attained the highest state of spiritual union. That's compassion. That's the bodhisattva of Buddhism, who is the embodiment, has their being in compassion, in illumination, and has devoted themselves to the alleviation of the suffering of all sentient beings. I got to tell you, I just watched yesterday, I know this will date this video, but that's okay. I just watched yesterday a film on Netflix, a documentary called My Octopus Teacher. Do you know it? My Octopus Teacher. It's a documentary about a man in South Africa who befriends an octopus, and I'll just leave it there. Get some tissues, because it was a spiritual experience watching that film. And it's exactly this. He comes to find something so boundless, so profound in his relationship with this beautiful little octopus that sits on his hand. They only live about a year, and the film in 90 minutes covers that whole cycle. This film, it'll make you weep, not just with sorrow, but with illumination and with joy. I mean, it just melts you. My Octopus Teacher on Netflix. So awesome. So that's the talk about meditation. We can leave that there. There's a little line at the end that I'm struck by, though. He says, meditation is superior to severe asceticism and the path of knowledge. So there he's saying, Krishna is saying, meditation is a better path than like torturing yourself by fasting and starving in the forest. Or it's also better than the path of knowledge, jnana yoga, path of study and scripture. Meditation is better than those. It is also superior to selfless service. Oh, he's kind of picking a favorite here. It's like meditation is even better than karma yoga. That we were talking about before, selfless service. But in other chapters, he'll pick different favorites. He'll say action without renunciation is better. Action with renunciation to results is better. Don't worry about where's the answer, which path should I take. It's clear that the Bhagavad Gita is constructed so that it really feeds all different kinds of people. People who are led to meditation. People who are led to karma yoga, action, like our hero Arjuna. People who are led to other forms of renunciation. People who are led to devotion. We have still those chapters to come. So let's go to chapter 7 now, Wisdom from Realization. And here we're talking about, an increasingly subtle portrait of how the divine is within, and we just have to realize it. That there is Purusha, and then there is Prakriti, and the three gunas that I discussed earlier with you. The states of sattva, rajas, and tamas come from me, but I am not in them. These three gunas deceive the world. People fail to look beyond them to me, supreme and imperishable. So again, this is not a proximity problem. This is a perception problem. We're not far away from, again, I'll use the God word. We're not far away from God. It's right here, but we're not aware of it because we see just the surface, which is prakriti, the three gunas, which comprise prakriti, which comprise all forms, sattva, rajas, and tamas. And we have to start to understand how to look past those. The three gunas make up my divine Maya, difficult to overcome. But they cross over this Maya who take refuge in me. What does that mean, take refuge in me, right? It's beautiful poetry. Others are deluded by Maya, performing evil deeds. Performing evil deeds, they have no devotion to me, having lost all discrimination, all discernment. They follow the way of their lower nature. So this is Krishna again talking about devotion really, and also how devotion and knowledge are kind of woven together as we've been wondering about here. When a person is devoted to something with complete faith, I unify his faith in that. So again, there's Krishna saying, love what you love, have faith in what you have faith in. I accept people by all paths. However you come to me, that's how I accept you, and that's the path upon which I meet you, Krishna says. Then, when faith is completely unified, one gains the object of devotion. In this way, every desire is fulfilled by me. So it's really about Maya and delusion. That's what chapter 7 is about. And just understanding that you have to see past the surface of things. He says in verse 27 of chapter 7, delusion arises from the duality of attraction and aversion. And every creature is deluded by these from birth. We're attracted to some things and we're repelled by others. and to sort of start to think differently than that. Not live in that world of what is attracting me or what I'm afraid of and what I'm craving. Buddha, of course, taught a lot about that. That one can only attain illumination or enlightenment in Buddhism when you go beyond the twin perils of attraction and aversion. When you enter nirvana, to use Buddhist terms now, nirvana is the stillness, nirvana, no wind. It's the tranquility and serenity, quite of consciousness, very different than my ordinary consciousness, which is characterized by those two things, aversion and craving, liking and disliking, wanting and not wanting. And that's what I and most people spend our whole lives doing. And nirvanic consciousness is to have one's root in the Atman, which is free from all of that liking and not liking. So let's tap into one more real quick in this video, and that is chapter 8, the eternal Godhead. We're getting to 8, 9, 10, 11, where he's really going to reveal himself as the Lord, as Brahman. I pervade the entire universe in my unmanifested form. All creatures find their existence in me, he says, but I am not limited by them. Behold my divine mystery. And so he's basically laying out now, because Arjuna has been such a good and attentive student, the divine master, Krishna, is going to start revealing more and more of himself. These creatures do not really dwell in me, and though I bring them forth and support them, I am not confined within them. They move in me as the winds move in every direction in space. And so he starts to give lists. I am this, I am that, I am everything. It's sort of like God saying in the Bible, I am the Alpha and I am the Omega, which is the first letter of the Greek alphabet and the last letter of the Greek alphabet, and everything in between. It's just this unlimited Godhead kind of portrait. I am the goal of life, the Lord and support of all, the inner witness, the abode of all. I love that phrase, the inner witness. I often use that phrase when I teach meditation, that when we get below the surface mind with its cravings and fears and its thought stream, we enter into that boundless space where we look back and we start to watch our thoughts as if they were clouds blowing through the sky, and we shift our identification from the inhabitant of thoughts to the inner witness of those thoughts. That's such a key moment in any meditation practice. So he says, those who worship other gods with faith and devotion also worship me, even if they do not observe the usual forms. I am the object of all worship, its enjoyer and Lord. Whatever I am offered in devotion with a pure heart, a leaf, a flower, or fruit, or water, I accept with joy, Krishna says. Whatever you do, make it an offering to me. If you're a piano player and you perform music, make it an offering to the Lord. The food you eat, the sacrifices you make, the help you give, even your suffering, make it an offering to me. In this way, you will be freed from the bondage of karma and from its results, both pleasant and painful. Then, firm in renunciation and yoga, with your heart free, you will come to me. I look upon all creatures equally. None are less dear to me and none more dear. Again, there's that beautiful equality, that egalitarian message. All those who take refuge in me, Krishna says, whatever their birth, race, sex, or caste, will attain the supreme goal. This realization can be attained even by those whom society scorns. This drives Gandhi. Let's go back to the 20th century. This drives Gandhi deep into his practice of reaching out to the untouchables, the Shudras, those shunned by the higher castes and by most people. This is what makes him committed to work for labor rights with great compassion for those whom the system has clearly crushed and not rewarded, and to make the system more just, and to work for the compassionate alleviation of suffering of all beings, since all forms, as we've heard Krishna say, are him. Just as Jesus teaches his disciples, feed my lambs, that however you treat the least of me, Jesus says, you are treating me. So if you are a Christian, in your Christian life, in your deepest, holiest practice, you realize what God is asking of you. That as much as you love God and hold God in supreme regard, so too you must regard the lowliest of all creatures. To see God in the lowest of people, that is what saints do. That is what students of the Bhagavad Gita aspire to do. And it's wherever you are in your own personal, spiritual, religious, philosophical journey, that is something to try on as a shift in consciousness, that as we've now come to see this far into the Gita, not only serves the Lord, not only serves the suffering of others, but is in a backhanded way, ultimately in our own self-interest. As the Dalai Lama put it, compassionate action toward others is the highest form of self-interest. Why? Because it sets us free from all the wrong things that we've been chasing and reintroduces us to the sacred home from which we have come and to which we are crawling back on our knees. As the great 20th century teacher Ram Dass put it, we're all just walking each other home. And when we return in the next part of our series through the Bhagavad Gita, we will take up the next chapter and the next handful of chapters. Join me on the other side in the next video. See ya.